Very good. All right, so without further ado, again, thank you everybody for joining us. I know some of y'all are longtime supporters, some of you are new. Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is our panel on how Japanese street racing fused with anime became a cultural phenomenon, presented by your Cars and Anime team. So without further ado, let's get to the presentation. Now, full disclaimer. The content featured in this presentation is for educational purposes only. Please do not mimic any of the actions that we present here today. Now, going down the line, we're going to introduce ourselves here. Of course, some of you all know me. I'm Jeremy, aka the organizer and founder of Cars and Anime San Diego. And then next up we have...
Hi, I'm Pauline. I also go by Salt Queen Cosplay, and I helped organize, I guess, the cosplay contest for Cars and Anime.
Hi guys, I'm Chester. I pretty much just help Jeremy on the organizing of the event. Anything he needs backup on, I'm there with him.
And I'm R. I'm the one that also runs Arness Design Works, and I've been helping these guys since day one. And I also host Doja Meet Nights, North County's anime SD car meet.
And here in spirit is Ducky, who couldn't make it today because we needed to sacrifice the eldest daughter of a family to something. So, but she'll be here tomorrow.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, so here's the little panel breakdown. So, we're talking, 80s to 2000s, right? It starts off with, 90s Japanese street racing scene, and it was documented through manga, specific through Michiharu Kusunoki. He was the one that made Shaka-san Boogie and Wangan the Midnight. Shuichi Shingiro made Initial D, which took off. And Keiichi Tsuchiya, specifically the Drift King, historically, the one who popularized drifting from street racing to professional racer, was the supervisor for Initial D, so it was a big support in its success. And to describe a little bit more of the action and why it's so important and documenting it through anime and manga, we have R.
Yeah, so pretty much there was a, so as you can see here, wait, which slide? Okay. So pretty much, around like the 80s or 90s, we can pretty much see like a big surge, like fantasization, like the street scene through like the anime manga, like Initial D, Wangan Midnight, etc., etc. So, as you can see here, does art mimic life, or does life mimic art? Somewhere in the bottom, you can see in like Initial D, they managed to convey the feel of what it's like in the 90s street scene. Most of the spectators all crowded around the corners to watch the racers. Some of them even had like walkie-talkies to relay incoming traffic. In Wangan Midnight, they met up and discussed the rules and the routes before the race. Now then.
Yeah, anime and JDM cultures take the West. So here's the thing. How many people remember Four Kids?
Oh,
as much as I want to talk trash on Four Kids, I also want to honor the fact that they are the reason that a lot of us were even allowed to have anime in our households to begin with. Like back when anime was seen as violent or porn or anything like that, we had Four Kids that, as much as they censored things so terribly, it allowed us to actually have access to it in our households, which I think is really awesome. It was also a time where we really saw localization of anime, which, for better or for worse, whether it's a jelly donut or something else, there always comes with the pros and cons. But the reality is that I think it just really gave a lot of people access at the time when anime was just starting to globalize.
And here's a little bit more examples. Toonami specifically was the one that imported a lot more of the classic, what we see as classic animes, Bebop, Evangelion, the darker stuff, the more hard-hitting stuff, because it was obviously on a late-night programming. And that's what exposed us more into the things that we consider are a tribute to the golden era of anime, on top of the childhood ones like Pokemon and Digimon. And then moving on, at the same exact time, we're talking early 2001 to 3, right? When everybody's still relatively young, right? We're still young at heart. Getting into this stuff, it's kind of hard to get in the West, but luckily through video games, through TV, we were able to get this stuff. And how the West interpreted JDM culture, it was through a lot of video games and obviously movies like Fast and Furious.
So you guys know how like Paul Walker has the R34 GTO, right? And even in Underground 2, you were intro to like a 350Z. You think those would be like the true JDM, right? Well, that's what the West thought it was. It's actually this stuff right here. Most of what's accepted here is truly defines the JDM culture. TXR, D1GP, you name it. Everything you see here is how it actually is like in Japan.
Yeah, so the cool thing about these, I'm not sure if anybody's familiar with these outlets, but things like Hot Version, JDM Insider was the true documentation straight from Japan, guerrilla filmed. There was a lot of people that were documented that were more or less lost their licenses, banned, because we were getting images like this. And this is what the West was trying to mimic. As you see there, like that was unscripted, that crash at the bottom right there. You know, you don't get that in Western media when street racing was being glorified through Fast and Furious. This is the real like highway racing. This is the real street racing on the mountains. Kids would meet up in the mountains and do their thing because they wanted to mimic at the time Japan's automotive motorsport scene, which was booming. And that leads us to how continually it takes over the West because as it got popular through these mediums, D1GP made drifting professional. It was a street thing, but they saw the money that could be involved turning it into a sport. So as it grown in Japan, it eventually came to its way to the United States in around 2003, 2004, the first initial D1GP exhibitions, and eventually we birthed our own USA version, Formula Drift, which is like the biggest professional drift league in the world right now. Yeah, and then with that impact on culture, we go to what we grew up in, mid-2000s.
Yeah, so definitely talking about like the 2000s to 2010 cosplay boom. Like, yes, Anime Expo had like a huge role on that, but I think it also came with more localization and globalization of anime and bringing bigger and bigger names to conventions, right? So like Anime Expo's ultimate impact was industry, cosplay, and ultimately bridging Japanese culture with American culture and bringing pieces of Japan to America without adaptation. So without having to assimilate to American culture and Western culture, it was allowed to be itself. We saw huge influences during this time, such as Avatar: Last Airbender and Heroes of Cosplay. And so we saw like a lot of that kind of stuff being streamlined. This was also a huge time when AMVs were really big and Quizilla and Gaia Online, like all of these things that like ultimately played, like it had a lot of Japanese influence, like it had a lot of anime influence in it. This is also when we saw arcades popping up like wild, and manga being sold at traditional comics stores, and we also saw Japanese video games showing up in home consoles, like just the GameCube took off, PlayStation took off, like we see all these things, and the West was trying to compete with things like we're not going to talk about it. So, but that's like a big part of it. And along with this, we also saw this happening in San Diego. And so we saw, I said, my notes are, look at these weirdos, me, I'm the weirdo. And so anyway, we saw like a huge boom also in just like overall cosplay creation. Like, oh my goodness, the creation and like implementation of things like Warbler and how we could work with foam. Like all these became so mainstream and mainlined that it really launched cosplay to like a whole new level. Like a lot of the cosplay you see now didn't exist back then. And so, but to speak a little bit more on the cosplay scene from the other side of the lens.
Yeah, actually those photos have been my photos since like 2006 to 2008. So it's not like as extravagant as like the cosplay nowadays. And I still remember vaguely like sneaking out. I was a like high schooler back then. I would sneak out just to go to cosplay events, and which they're a couple of hours away from where I was staying in Japan. But yeah, from now, from the anime, from the manga scene back then, it kind of inspired everyone that, oh, I can dress up as this, I can dress up as that, but how do I make it that I look like that person? And that was where like cosplay like making was kind of a hit, but it kind of showcased as well like what it was before. And those are my like older photos, excuse that they don't look good. But, yeah, my
they're
photos look good now.
fine.
All right.
And then of course, oh, not yet. We weren't born yet.
Come back.
Oh, you're going too far.
I can help. Why?
20, 20, 20.
There we go.
There we go. Okay, so going back in time a little bit, you know, who remembers this scene? The most popular games at arcades were the Japanese games, specifically DDR and usually initially or Maxi Tune, where you had to wait in line to play or stack your memory card, as you see there, initially memory cards, to challenge the other player to take their seat. If anybody remembers that, you had to do that DDR2, stack your coins and challenge the next player. And that's what we grew up with, seeing these games that kind of documented in a way, yes, it dramatized it, but documented what was real in Japan, the street racing, the highway racing, all that kind of stuff. Which leads us to the ultimate crossover of, you know, anime and race cars is Itasha. And what Itasha means, it means painful car. You know, you can interpret it as painfully embarrassing or painfully disturbing to the wallet. So it's styled by motorsports cars and usually accustomed with your favorite anime character or video game character.
Then we have some outside today.
Yeah, we have some outside. If you guys haven't had a chance to see them, they're outside in the front. And those are our friends right here.
Also, towards like late 2015s, that's where also cars were introduced onto anime conventions. I think, if not, Anime Impulse is, I think, the first show in the West to bring Itasha cars in cosplay, not just cosplay event, but anime conventions. And I don't know if there's another convention that does that.
And then as you see at the bottom as well, like professional rate, like Itasha and anime got to the point where professional racing teams are marketing these things. You know, Good Smile Racing, they have a full-fledged you know, racing team with some historical legendary drivers, and that's insane. So that brings us to today, or closer to today. The birth of cars in anime, and why. Why are we all here today in this room? So everything we discussed, what we grew up with anime, what we grew up with the street racing stuff, it led to this point of wanting both cultures from the childhood that, you know, I grew up wanting and my friends grew up wanting, and it was non-existent, specifically here in San Diego, and it's not what we expected it to be, okay? We had lack of anime scenes here. How, you know, this is an example of like how much was needed, the impact on this first San Diego Anime Con, right? And we were hungering for so long, just being dissatisfied. We're tired of driving up. We're tired of going all these places outside of our home city when the artists and the creators are down here. And on top of that, being a gearhead, a driver, I was very dissatisfied with the racing scene, like, or, you know, car scene, because there was, you could go to a car meet, but not everybody's willing to drive. They're more, you know, I could sit and park and look pretty. And then you're like, hey, do you know how the part performs? I'm like, no, it just looks cool, or I like the performance. And then I was like, no, I want people to drive, and that's where my friends came in, my teams. So I was in a toge team and a drift team, and all of them involved weebs, just down the line. So we had Team Striker was my toge team, and Master Roshi Mob was my drift team, and we all shared the same passion, and we were just looking for people that loved anime and wanted to drive and learn the art of getting better at driving. And then it came to the point where, like, hey, dude, you used to host concerts from my historically being in a band and stuff. Why don't you just gather, you know, people for a meet, kind of anime style event? And I said, you know, let's try that. And we started with what is pre-Cars in Anime. Back in 2019, I created this meet called Summer Nights. And it was the first one, only had 2 vendors, R being one of the original vendors. And, you know, I had to find a way to uniquely promote it. And by doing the whole anime like crossed over into the dimension of 2D with the Photoshops that I did, that was my way of promoting it to the audience. And it, you know, it became a success. And that was the start of it all. It showed me that people really wanted this stuff and had interest in this stuff. And originally it was supposed to be an extension to the YouTube channel, but obviously it's grown to something beyond that. Now, with the growth of Cars in Anime, or birth of Cars in Anime, I'm just gonna let the people who experienced it firsthand and what it did for them.
So let me just put it there first off. So as Jeremy said earlier, the lack of there being a scene here, specifically in San Diego, was the biggest drive to have this exist. I mean, yeah, again, how many of us have always drove up to LA, Orange County, Santa Ana, just to go to like Segoy or any other spot? Yeah, a good vast majority of us, right? I know I was one of them. I was willing to go up there too, and I don't mind the drive, but I know most of us are like, we need something here, and you know, I agree. And so now we finally got it, and being as a vendor for also, again, the first one, I was super stoked when I found out we had a San Diego based anime car meet, let alone somewhere near the Otay Mesa area. And I'm like, you know what? Let's go. And so I went to it, and I have no regrets now.
Yeah. Well, basically, I grew up, like 4 years of my high school, I was in Japan. And I was a Japanese exchange student. Most of my time there was because of cars. My friend introduced me to cars. It was random too. I was in school, and my friend was like, hey, my dad and I are going to the track. Do you want to join us? I was like, yeah, sure. I joined there, and the dad was like, do you know how to drive stick? I was like, yeah, sure. Here's the car, go have fun. And I was like, what? Of course I'm gonna mess up. And I messed up a lot. He grabbed the hammer and beat the out of it. And he was like, okay, it's working now. Go do it again. And I was like, so stoked. And also growing up with going to conventions, I was longing for an event where I could mesh up those two, and I couldn't find that anywhere else. It's what they said. I would drive up to LA, and here I would go with him to we went to Ontario, Vegas, Pasadena, just to go up with these kind of events. And having something local was really a big hit for me. And when the time came where Jeremy needed help to organize these events because he didn't have anyone, and I was like, I didn't hesitate. I'm in. That's where my love for cars and anime is. Yeah.
Yeah. So some transparency for people is that so I grew up in the American classic scene with a father who is like very, very passionate about it. I'm just saying I had no interest in cars after experiencing that. It was not a place that like really uplifted like creativity or women. And so it was like really cool like experiencing the GDM scene and experiencing cars and anime specifically. My friends brought me, they were like, want to come to this event, we can cosplay, and I was like, yeah, let's do it. And then I got there and I was like, oh, cars. Got it. And but then after meeting people and talking to people and hearing like how passionate people were about modifications, about being unique, and about like just embracing like having a she box, and that I was like, no, this is like really chill and cool. And so I now go for my own volition, and yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, and it was ultimately for the growth from, car meet to event. It happened in the pandemic that gave us the boost, but it also showed us this is how much people wanted something like this. Because all of you here today represent that need, represent that hunger. And, thankfully for all of you is why we are here today at San Diego Anime Con. And we, again, give yourselves a round of applause for bringing us to this point, and we're continuing to grow. But yeah, that's part of you guys' work. And ultimately provide artists, cosplayers, anime fans a unique place to experience and learn about both cultures. And then to make it more unique, obviously our exclusive stickers, the ones that you kind of got passed out, a tribute to the old arcade initial D games, and that's what also made it more kind of unique and valuable to the people that support it.
So we now are getting to the point where we're bringing cosplay contests. So the first cosplay contest we had was, where was that?
It was behind like SDRC.
It was such a weird location, and I just remember being asked if I could help like bring some people together, and so yeah, we did, and it just kind of came to this point of like, hey, if cosplayers are showing up, why are we not showcasing them? Like, we have them here, why not make it part of this? And so So that just, the very first one was just a basic, like, audience applause equals the winner, you know, like, big, loudest applause wins. To now where we have judges, which, like, me and Ducky are definitely part of that. And then to the future, like, who knows, maybe we'll grow and adapt.
Yeah, and some examples from our past shows, as you see here. Good stuff, combining the cars and the cosplay. And then as it grew, we started implementing a little bit more things like the RC drift community. Thanks to Curbside Drifting, they bring their little RC cars, let everybody try them out, see what it's all about. That's a completely different hobby, but it still happens to relate to, you know, what we're doing and achieving in terms of event stuff.
Jeremy, you kind of have to honor Vertex.
Oh, yeah, Vertex as well, actual Vertex.
Because most of the people, yeah.
They work at Vertex, they're Team Vertex. That's as JDM as it gets, or as Japanese culture as it gets.
All right, so I mentioned that Ducky's here with us in spirit. So she had shared like her thoughts on cars and anime, so I just was asked to read this. So I truly believe cars and anime has contributed greatly to the anime and car communities in San Diego. It's brought attention to the fact that there is a large audience for those things in SD. It's helped create a space for people who are interested in one or the other, or even both. As a cosplayer who's always found herself having to travel for anime-related events for the last decade, cars and anime has allowed me to do my beloved hobby in my hometown, while also getting to meet new people and learn more about the car scene. It's great to have a meet where my boyfriend and I's interests collide. It's also introduced me to other cool and similar events such as BizBaz and the new SD Anime Con, which brings all kinds of people together in a safe space where we can all be ourselves. Thanks, Cars and Anime.
Thank you, Ducky. Everybody say thank you, Ducky. So she can get that on video. And with the continued expansion, as we grew and grew, you know, obviously inspired events similar. We have our sibling events. So we have Turbos and Titties, which is our breast cancer one. The wife and husband run it. We've done 4 or 5 of them, or quite a few, and they've done really good in terms of raising funds for the organizations that they donate to. Slow and Stylish, a little bit more kickback, and we got R over there with his Doge and Meat Nights for North County. And then Saucy as well. He's come back to do his cars and coffees in the morning. But the bloodline of our team is the lady right there in the picture is Lala. She's SD Red Sons. She's a day one supporter ever since Cars and Anime 1. She went up to us and said, I want to be a part of this team and support you guys, and you know, she's been with us through everything, and you know, we're so grateful for her. So everything behind the scenes, you got to thank Lala for. Woo! And as we expand, we're just showcasing here what we've done. We've recently, for a year and a half, we've been at the BizBaz shows where they allotted us a space to do our little display, show off our cars, and promote our event at their show, which is a more broader artist market. You can actually visit them at their booth in the Tower Room, and we're just thankful for them. They own the boba shop. They're about to open up locally at I think University area, Alcohol Boulevard near University area. So get ready for that when they open up their mom and pop shop. Fantastic folk. Make sure to say hi to them upstairs. We also did a Drift Matsuri back in May last year. There's you see some of our cars that were out there. You know, this is really engulfing the culture, like anime fans that actually drive and love doing this stuff. You know, we aren't just there to look pretty. We show up at the track to look pretty, and then we just start smashing and bashing just like our favorite anime characters fighting it out on the scenes. And, you know, just continued growth. Pangea Con, that was fun. Oh, God. Interesting experience, and, you know, ultimately, the next thing, we got big enough to get the you know, noticed by Drift Week, which is they're like a cross-country kind of tour in a way, right? And they do this whole week of driving their cars to multiple tracks across the country. And this specific one had a famous Japanese driver, Naoki Nakamura, which is like a lot of our inspirations for drifting. And we were invited by one of the guys that he had an Itasha that drifted at our event, and he's like, hey, I want to have you at my booth. And thankfully to him, he allowed us to participate and, you know, represent Cars and Anime San Diego there, introducing us to a larger audience that we didn't have at the time, too. And continuing, we did the JFG, which is, you know, Otaka Smash Festival. Great venue. It was fun. You have any thoughts, Pauline?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm actually on the Japanese Friendship Gardens diversity committee, and when I was reached, my friend that works there was telling me like, hey, we had this one group who will go unnamed, who's kind of ghosted me. Do you happen to know of anybody? And I was like, yeah, actually I do. And it was really cool because I think kind of the goal of JFG and the diversity committee is to connect the JFG with the greater San Diego community, and this was an awesome opportunity to do that in a way that's still like honoring Japanese culture, but also getting San Diegans like more involved.
You know, and then moving on, we had Anime Land, which was about a month or two ago. And this was interesting because they said, hey, we want cars and anime there, but can you guys park the cars in the mall? And I've never parked cars in the mall. So the guys here can attest, like, that was a pretty interesting experience. But it was cool, you know, introducing it to people that otherwise wouldn't know about this stuff. Again, the anime stuff, the car stuff. Kids were asking questions. They would hang out at the booth and be like, oh, this is cool. Is there more of this? Which leads us to like what we are doing today. And you know, the resurgence of racing anime is gonna help for that future. The new generation of animes here, you know, MFG, Overtake, High Drivers, and what's this, High Speed Itolai, right? Is that how they pronounce it? Yeah. You know, these are the new generations, and you know, we're gonna see how they transpire and inspire, and like the next generation, how Initial D did to us or Wangan did to us. I mean, if you guys have seen MFG, like, take it what it is. I know we were all kind of critical about it, but hey, it's still a good watch. Overtake, I'm having fun with. I can relate to it as a photographer and as an F1 fan, and in general, the characters and stories are very, you know, fun and relatable. And you know, that brings us to our present, you know, here, San Diego Anime Con. This is day one. Y'all realize we sold out the weekend? Give yourselves a round of applause. You guys are part of this scene here in San Diego. And just a little tidbit, there's a reason why DM and I, the organizer of this event, why both of our brands have San Diego in it. We want people to know that these conventions, these events are from San Diego to pull people in. Because anybody can name something cars and anime, but at the end of the day, we're so recognizable that they're gonna compare it to Cars and Anime San Diego. You know, it's like, same thing with San Diego Anime Con. It's like San Diego Anime Con, it's the first of its kind in its unique way. So with you guys being here, supporting the scene, supporting your craft, supporting everything that you love about this stuff, you are building the greater future of what we have here in San Diego, and you gotta thank yourselves for that. It's not just the people behind the scenes, it's you, the attendants, the fans that make this stuff possible. So again, give yourself a round of applause for that. Thank you. And that kind of just wraps up how, you know, Japanese street racing and you know, golden era anime brought itself together in a weird way from Japan, made it to the West, and combined to make a beautiful thing.